Hey everybody, it's John. I'm in the kitchen today. It's Saturday. It's become a beautiful sunny day here in Texas, a beautiful fall day. And the cats are asleep. Mary's out of town with her mom, and I want to make a video about knives. And I'm going to make a longer video. It's about 15 minutes long. This one's going to be brief, I promise. About chef's knives, or knives that a chef uses. And these are all, as I look at them, Japanese knives, except for one. And over time, I have moved from European style knives, which my parents gave me and which I bought and used over time, to Japanese knives, which are much better. They are amazingly sharper. The steel's better and holds an edge over time, so if you sharpen it yourself or have someone else sharpen it, it will remain sharp longer. Lighter weight, but heavier duty, because if you think about it, I mean, all cultures use steel, but the Japanese culture of steels and swords and their idea of kaizen and constant improvement and other aspects of Japanese culture, they have really perfected steel. So let's talk about the knives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are 5 knives that I use almost daily in the kitchen. And any one of these knives, you can get an inexpensive version for, let's say, $50 up to, you can get some of these knives for $2,000, but you could get a really nice one, let's say, for $150 or $180, some of these knives. So if you wanted to pick one knife, I'll talk a little about that. So here they are. The first one is a chef's knife. And this one was made by a guy named Kramer, not the guy from Seinfeld. But Kramer's a famous knife designer, and he worked with a company, BDM or KAI, that is now Shun. You can buy this knife from Shun. There's a Kramer series. This is an expensive knife. I forget. This knife might have been like $300, which I consider expensive for a knife, though many do not. It's got a beautiful handle. And this is a chef's knife. And what you can do with it is you can grab it like this. And this is how you hold all knives. You hold the knife all the way up with your hand on the blade. You can see it's got a lot of knife clearance. It's got a pretty big space down here, so I can get at chopping things if I'm like making a stock, or if I need to get through a chicken bone or something like that. It's got a bit of a curve right here, so that I can then rock and do that rocking for cutting up herbs or something like that I need to dice up. And then the tip is extremely sharp and pointy, and I can use that, and the Japanese chefs do, to cut up, say, some fine herbs or some shallots, or to really mince or get at or start the cut of a lemon. And it is thin enough and sharp enough to slice a tomato. I sharpen these knives myself. This knife was made in what's called the Damascus process. It's multiple layers of steel. It's got this really beautiful aspect. So this is a big, heavy knife. It seems frightening to use because it's so big, but it's actually the safest knife in the kitchen because you can grab it, you can hold it. A younger person could use a knife like this. You can get it in a smaller size. If you're a pro, you can get it in a bigger size. I really wouldn't want to. This one, I believe, is 210 millimeters is the size. So this is the workhorse. It's curved on the top. You can use it all day. You can get one of these from Swiss Army for like 25 to 35 bucks. That Cooks Illustrated says it's great. Second knife is also a chef's knife, but this is a classic Japanese knife. This is called a wa gyodo. Wa means it's got a wooden handle, and the shape is gyodo. It maintains many of the things from the chef's knife. It's got a straight bottom, it's got a rock point, and it has a razor sharp tip. This knife is much narrower. This knife is also carbon steel. That other knife was stainless. You can see it's discolored, which is fine with me. I use this knife for cutting herbs a lot. We do a lot of fresh herbs in the garden here in Texas, and I'll use this to cut anything. But really, a wa gyodo, and they come a little bit taller. This one just happens to be narrow. Mary really likes this knife. It fits her hand nicely. They come in all different sizes. They're not for cutting bone or breaking down a big squash or something like that. The Japanese would use a knife called a diba for that. It's a big fish cutting knife or meat cutting knife. It's narrow, so it's super fast. I can work it with my knuckles if I have to, same as the big knife. And then the tip, if I have to do some tip work, again, we do a lot of cooking with shallots, which is a kind of kitchen secret. Pros use a lot of shallots and a lot of butter. You read about that from Anthony Bourdain. This knife can get right at those shallots and mince things up, the smallest mince of anything I've ever done. So this is a wa gyodo. You can get a knife like this for about $100 up to thousands. A really nice one would be about $250 in a really nice Japanese steel, a blue steel that holds its edge forever. You can get a stainless one for $150 that you would love to have in your kitchen and will always look great. The next knife is nigiri, and this is a knife that is exclusively for cutting vegetables. It's got a perfectly flat bottom. You're going to use that choo-choo train motion to cut your veg. It doesn't have a sharp point. You can give this to a younger person in the kitchen or someone who's not so interested in using a sharp knife. Again, people kind of look at these and go, "Whoa!" But you put your knuckles up next to this thing, and you start cutting your apple or your onion or your carrot, and it's really easy and safe to use. So it seems like a cleaver, but it's not. It's very lightweight, and it sharpens up razor sharp and straight. Really easy knife to learn how to sharpen Japanese knives with. So this is a knife we use all the time for kitchen prep. Next knife, this one's fun. I bought this one in Tokyo, and this is called a petty knife. A French or American word, petty, small. And it's shaped kind of like the Wagyoto, but it's designed for smaller tasks. It's not quite a paring knife, though the Japanese do it for that. I can't. But Leela and I were in Tokyo once and watched a woman peeling the silvery, slivery skin off some leeks with this knife during our whole meal. It was like entranced. This one's cool. It's got all this hammering on it, which is really beautiful. And then this Damascus, this layered steel. And then it's sharpened just on one side. So instead of having like a 30 or 40 degree V bevel, it's got half. So it's like a 15 or 20 degrees. So it's much sharper and cuts through things nicely. You can't get your hand behind it, but you certainly can cut up strawberries or any kind of smaller work that you need to do with a knife like this. And it's just great. It's beautiful and it's lightweight. Last knife's a paring knife, and this one's a Wusthof, so this is the German knife in the lineup. The Japanese make a paring knife like this, but not so much. They mostly go with the petty knife. And the paring knife is great. You can hold it like this and get your hand right down there and get at, say if this were an apple, you could core around the apple and then you could peel the apple. You could pare it. Look at the cat, this is awesome. There's a video of a guy named Jacques Papin, and he peels an apple with his paring knife. He does a lot with this paring knife. So I urge you to get these. And this one's stainless steel. It's super easy to sharpen. You can just really sharpen it right up. So those are my knives. The knife that's missing from this whole thing is the Sentoku knife. Let's see. Yeah, I have my friend Jane's Sentoku knife, so I forgot this one. This one's kind of a combination of many of the knives. And if you were just out to get one nicer or expensive Japanese knife, I would urge you to get a Sentoku. This one's a Wusthof, but the Japanese Shun and other companies make them. You can't go wrong. It's a great shape. It holds your knuckles well. It'll have a nice point, so you can get it stuffed with the point. And it's got a pretty good base, so you can cut things. So, Sentoku knife. This one's not mine. I lent mine out, but I have this and I use it all the time. It's really a wonderful knife in the kitchen. So I hope this helps. Chef knife for breaking down big pieces of meat, but all kinds of other work as well. That you would need to do, especially with the tip. A Wagyoto, which if you want to buy a Japanese knife, these are just amazing. They're so thin and strong and just beautifully designed. Wagyoto. Nigiri for cutting up veg. Cooks Illustrated has nigiri right now that I just saw Chris Kimball, not Cooks Illustrated, Milk Street, his new thing, Milk Street, that he's talking about using. A petty knife. And they're less expensive, so you can get one that's kind of slightly more expensive with this really cool design on it. It'll look really great in your kitchen. And then finally, of course, a paring knife. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. And take a look at some of my other videos. I'm going to make one on cutting up food, and I'm going to make one on sharpening knives as well. So that's it. Have a great weekend, everybody. See ya.